Rain poured hard over the Lawson family mansion in Ikoyi, Lagos. Black umbrellas covered the crowd gathered for Henry Lawson's funeral. The sound of the pastor's voice mixed with the rain, soft and heavy. Amara stood a little away from everyone, holding her small black umbrella tightly. Her dress was simple, her face calm, but her eyes told another story. A few feet away, her mother, Margaret, stood close to her son Tund. She held his arm, whispering comfort to him. But not once did she turn to look at Amara. When Amara slowly stepped closer, Margaret leaned toward her, her voice sharp and cold beneath the sound of rain. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "He pitied you enough while he was alive. Don't disgrace us now." Amara swallowed hard. Her voice was quiet but firm. "He was my father too." Margaret's eyes flashed with disgust. "You were never wanted. You were his mistake, not mine." Amara froze. Her chest tightened as the words hit her like stones. Around them, a few family friends glanced in her direction, whispering behind gloved hands. She looked down at the wet ground, her tears mixing with the rain. When it was time for the family to speak, Margaret stepped forward. Her tone was proud, smooth, and full of control. "Henry Lawson was a great man," she began. "He loved his family dearly, especially his son Tund, who was his pride and joy." There was polite clapping. Not once did she say Amara's name. Not once did she even look her way. Amara stood still, her heart breaking silently. When the crowd began to leave, she stayed near the grave. The rain soaked her dress, but she didn't move. She stared at the fresh soil, her lips trembling as she whispered softly, "You were the only one who ever made me feel seen." A flash of lightning lit the dark sky, followed by a loud crack of thunder. The wind grew stronger, bending trees, and the moment burned deep into her heart. The family lawyer announced that Henry Lawson's will would be read in 1 week. The crowd murmured with curiosity. Margaret's face tightened. For the first time that day, a small flicker of worry crossed her proud expression. Amara noticed it, and somehow, she knew that whatever was in that will, it might finally reveal the truth her mother feared most. Amara worked as a junior architect in a small design firm in Lagos. Her apartment was tiny, just 1 bedroom, a small kitchen, and a view of the street below. She didn't have much, but it was peaceful. After years of growing up in a house filled with coldness and silence, peace meant everything to her. Her best friend, Kemi, often stopped by after work, bringing food and laughter with her. That evening, as they sat on the couch eating jollof rice, Kemi looked at her seriously. "Amara, you need to stop letting them hurt you," she said. "You have a good job, your own place, your own life. Forget what your family did." Amara smiled weakly. "It's not that easy. No matter how far I go, their voices still follow me." Kemi sighed, then stopped listening. Amara looked down. The truth was she had been trying for years, but the past was not easy to forget. Her mind often drifted back to the mansion in Ikoyi, the grand house that never felt like home. She remembered how her mother, Margaret, always compared her to Tund. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" Margaret would say. "He's strong, confident, and knows how to make us proud." Tund used to mock her too. "You're just the charity case," he'd say with a smirk. "Dad only keeps you around out of pity." Those words had carved deep scars in Amara's heart. Only one person ever made her feel like she mattered. Her father, Henry Lawson. He was gentle and quiet, a man who spoke with kindness even when others didn't. When Amara struggled in school, it was Henry who helped her study late at night. When Margaret refused to pay her university fees, Henry secretly paid them himself. And when she had her final architecture presentation, he was the only parent sitting in the audience, clapping with pride. She remembered one night clearly. She was 10 years old, sitting beside him on the porch as fireflies danced around the garden. He had put his arm around her and said softly, "You don't need to be loud to be worthy, my girl. Just keep your heart kind. That's enough." Those words had stayed with her all her life. When Henry died suddenly, Amara didn't even know at first. No one called her. No message came from the family. It was her old neighbor who told her, whispering gently, "I'm sorry, my dear. Your father passed away." Her hands had shaken so much she could barely hold her phone. She had rushed to the mansion, but Margaret's eyes were cold, filled with the same rejection as always. Even then, she hadn't been allowed to grieve properly. Now, a week after the funeral, The will reading was set to take place. Margaret had already made it clear what she thought. "You don't need to attend," she said over the phone. "Your name won't be there. Don't embarrass yourself." Amara had stayed quiet. When the call ended, she sat on her bed for a long time, staring at the rain outside. She didn't plan to go for the money. She didn't care about the mansion or the land. What she wanted was something Margaret could never give her: peace. So the next morning, she laid out a simple black dress, ironed it carefully, and packed her small bag. She looked around her little apartment, the sketches on her wall, the potted plant Kemi had given her, the framed photo of her and her father smiling together at her graduation. She touched the photo gently and whispered, "I'll go, Papa. Not for them. For you." Her eyes filled with quiet determination. She didn't know what waited for her at that lawyer's office, but she was ready to face it. For once in her life, she would not hide. She would show up, even if it meant walking straight into the storm. The Lawson family lawyer's office was quiet except for the sound of rain tapping against the windows. The air felt heavy, filled with tension and old resentment. Margaret and Tund walked in first. Margaret wore a bright gold dress and heavy jewelry that sparkled under the light. Tund followed, looking proud and confident in his expensive suit. They greeted everyone like they already knew the outcome. Then Amara entered quietly. She wore a simple black dress, her hair tied back neatly. She didn't say a word as she took a seat at the far end of the long wooden table. Her hands trembled slightly in her lap. Mr. Okoye, the family lawyer, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. The sound made everyone stop talking. According to the late Mr. Henry Lawson's final testament, he began slowly, reading from the thick document before him. Margaret's lips curled into a small smile. She sat back in her chair, confident. Tund crossed his arms, looking bored, as if he already knew what was coming. But then Mr. Okoye continued. The bulk of his estate, including the family home, is to be transferred to his daughter Amara Lawson. For a second, no one moved. The words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. Amara blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. Margaret's smile disappeared. "This must be a mistake," she snapped. Mr. Okoye shook his head calmly. "It isn't, madam. Mr. Lawson left a handwritten note. He wrote, 'To my daughter who was denied love under my roof, I leave everything I built, because she deserved more than silence.'" The room went completely still. Margaret's face turned pale. Her hands clenched tightly around her purse. Tund slammed his hand on the table. "This is nonsense. She's not even your real daughter," he shouted. The words hit Amara like a slap. She stared at him, her heart pounding. "What did you just say?" she whispered. Tund's jaw tightened, but Margaret's face told the truth before she spoke. Her eyes were full of rage and fear. "You heard him," Margaret said finally, her voice sharp and cold. "You were never mine. Henry brought you home when you were just a baby. I wanted nothing to do with you, but he insisted we raise you. You ruined everything from the day you arrived." Amara's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her whole body felt numb. All her life, she had wondered why her mother treated her with such hatred, why every word, every look, felt like rejection. And now she finally knew. Her breath came out in short gasps. The room blurred. Tund kept shouting, calling her names, but she couldn't hear him anymore. Mr. Okoye tried to calm everyone, but his voice was distant, fading behind the sound of her heartbeat. Amara stood up suddenly. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. Without a word, she turned and walked out of the room. Outside, the sky had turned dark again. Rain poured heavily, soaking her instantly. She didn't open her umbrella. She just kept walking, her tears mixing with the rain. Margaret's last words followed her out the door, echoing in her mind like a curse she could never escape. "You were never wanted." Amara kept walking through the storm, her heart breaking with every step, but deep inside, something else began to stir. The truth had hurt, but it had also set something free. Amara spiraled into silence. Days turned into nights without meaning. She didn't answer her phone, not even when Kemi called over and over again. Her office sent messages asking why she hadn't shown up, but she ignored them all. She stayed in her small apartment, curtains closed, phone off, staring at nothing. Everything she thought she knew about her life felt like a lie. Her family, her home, even her own name, all suddenly felt like they belonged to someone else. Sometimes she cried until she couldn't anymore. Other times, she just sat there, numb, lost in the noise of her own thoughts. In her mind, memories kept coming back like ghosts she couldn't escape. She saw her younger self at her 10th birthday, standing beside a cake she baked with her father. Margaret never showed up. Tund had laughed at her. Only losers bake their own birthday cake, he said. She remembered coming home from school one day with a prize for best student. Her mother didn't smile. Instead, Margaret said, "Don't act proud. Tund has won more awards than you ever will." Even when Amara tried to help around the house, Margaret found something wrong. "You're too slow. You're too clumsy. You always ruin everything." Through all of it, her father had been her only light. He would leave small notes on her desk. "I'm proud of you." He would show up at her school plays when no one else did. He was the only one who ever made her feel like she belonged. And now he was gone, leaving her with a mother who never loved her and a brother who hated her even more. A week after the will reading, things got worse. Margaret and Tund filed a case in court, claiming Amara had forged the documents. They said she tricked their father before he died. Then the story spread online. Blogs and gossip pages posted headlines. "Illegitimate daughter inherits billionaire's empire." Who is Amara Lawson? The secret child nobody knew about. Photos of her leaving the lawyer's office appeared everywhere. People she barely knew sent her messages, some cruel, others pretending to care. She turned off her phone again. The noise was too much. One afternoon, Kemi showed up at her door. She knocked for several minutes before Amara finally opened. Her eyes were swollen, her hair messy, her clothes wrinkled. Kemi looked at her and shook her head. "Amara, this isn't you." Amara sat on the edge of her bed, silent. "They're calling me a liar, Kemi," she whispered. "They're saying I don't belong, and maybe they're right. My whole life was built on someone else's secret." Kemi crossed her arms. "You think your worth comes from their acceptance? No. You survived their rejection. That's strength." Amara looked up, tears in her eyes. "Your father loved you," Kemi continued softly. "That love was real. Don't let them take that away from you too." Kemi stayed with her that night, making her eat, forcing her to rest. The next morning, there was a knock on the door. It was Mr. Okoye, holding a brown envelope. "This was found among your father's personal documents," he said gently. "He asked that it be given to you after the will was read." Amara's hands trembled as she took it. After he left, she sat at her desk for a long time, staring at it. Finally, she opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written in her father's neat handwriting. Her heart beat faster as she began to read. "My dearest Amara, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. I need you to know the truth I could never say while alive. You are not Margaret's daughter, but you are mine. Your mother was a woman I loved before my marriage. She was kind, gentle, and full of life. She died giving birth to you. I couldn't abandon you, even when others told me to. So I brought you home and raised you as my own. I am sorry for the pain my silence caused. Everything I did was to protect you. You are the best part of me, Amara. Don't let anyone make you feel less than that. Love always. Your father." Tears streamed down her face as she read. She pressed the letter to her chest and sobbed. All the confusion, all the anger, all the grief, it came out at once. Her father's love had been real. She hadn't imagined it. He had chosen her, fought for her, even if he never told the whole truth. But peace didn't last long. Margaret's anger turned into something darker. She began spreading lies in the media, claiming Amara had manipulated Henry when he was sick. Then she tried to enter the mansion Henry left behind, the one now under Amara's name, and told the guards that Amara had stolen it. When they refused to let her in, she forged documents, pretending Henry had changed his will. Soon, Amara started receiving court letters and legal threats. The once quiet house she inherited was now filled with reporters and tension. It wasn't just about property anymore. It was about dignity, about a woman trying to destroy her daughter to hold on to her pride. But this time Amara didn't break. She met with Mr. Okoye again, showing him her father's letter. His eyes softened as he read it. "This changes everything," he said. "We'll fight back, Amara. Your father's truth will protect you now." Amara nodded slowly. Her voice was calm but firm. "I'm not running anymore." For the first time in weeks, she felt a spark of strength return. Her father's words echoed in her mind. You are the best part of me. Margaret could take her name, her peace, even her privacy, but she could never take that truth away. The courtroom was full that morning. Reporters filled the back rows, cameras clicking quietly as the Lawson family case began. Months had passed since the will reading, but the tension was still alive, heavier than ever. Margaret and Tund walked in together, dressed in their finest clothes. Margaret's gold jewelry sparkled under the bright lights. Tund's suit was sharp, his expression cold. They both looked confident, certain they would win. Amara sat on the opposite side, wearing a simple navy blue dress. She didn't have anyone beside her except Mr. Okoye. Her hands rested calmly on her lap, though her heart was beating fast. The judge entered, and everyone stood. The case began. Margaret's lawyer, a tall man with a booming voice, spoke first. Your Honor, he said, my clients believe the late Mr. Henry Lawson was not in his right mind when he wrote that will. The girl sitting there, he pointed at Amara, took advantage of him during his illness. She manipulated him into leaving everything to her. Gasps filled the courtroom. Margaret nodded along, pretending to wipe away tears. Tund kept his arms crossed, his mouth twisting in a bitter smile. Mr. Okoye rose slowly from his seat. His calm presence filled the room. With your permission, my lord, he said, I would like to present new evidence left behind by the late Mr. Lawson himself. The judge nodded. Mr. Okoye walked to the large screen in front of the court and pressed play on a video file. The lights dimmed. The sound of static filled the air. Then Henry Lawson's face appeared on the screen. He looked older and weaker, sitting in his study, his eyes full of sadness. His voice was soft but clear. If you're watching this, he began, it means I'm gone. Margaret, I know you never forgave me for bringing Amara home. But she was never your shame. She was my redemption. Everything I built belongs to her. Let her have what peace I couldn't give. The courtroom went silent. Margaret's mouth fell open. Her face turned pale. Tund looked around helplessly, as whispers filled the room. Henry's voice continued. I kept many things quiet to protect this family, but not anymore. Amara, my daughter, this is my final wish. Live freely. Don't let their hate define your heart. When the video ended, you could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner. No one spoke. Even the judge looked shaken. Then Mr. Okoye cleared his throat. Your Honor, there is one more thing. He handed the judge a file. Before his death, Mr. Lawson also left documents revealing company transactions, all traced back to Mrs. Margaret Lawson. It shows that she secretly withdrew funds from the company's accounts for years. He discovered it but chose to hide it to protect her reputation. Margaret jumped up. That's a lie, she shouted. He would never. But the judge raised a hand. Enough, Mrs. Lawson. Tund turned to her, his face full of shock. Mother, is this true? Margaret couldn't answer. Tears filled her eyes as the truth spread across the courtroom like fire. The woman who once stood so proud now looked small, broken, and exposed. The judge's voice was firm. After reviewing all evidence, the court finds that the late Mr. Henry Lawson's will is valid and legal. All properties, assets, and holdings are rightfully owned by Miss Amara Lawson. Amara closed her eyes for a moment. Her heart was heavy, not joyful. This victory didn't feel like winning. It felt like letting go of years of pain. Reporters whispered. Some clapped quietly, while others took photos. Margaret collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Tund stared at the floor, speechless. Amara stood and looked toward the judge. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were full of tears. Your Honor, she said softly. I don't want revenge. I just want the truth to stop hurting. The judge nodded respectfully. As Amara walked out of the courtroom, flashes from cameras lit her face, but she didn't care. The sky outside was clear for the first time in months. Behind her, Margaret sat in silence, stripped of everything. Her power, her pride, and her lies. For Amara, it wasn't about wealth or victory anymore. It was about peace, the kind her father had wanted her to find all along. Months later, the Lawson mansion looked nothing like before. The tall iron gates were freshly painted, the gardens filled with bright flowers. Laughter echoed from the hallways where sadness once lived. Amara had turned the house that once held her pain into a place of hope. A new sign hung at the entrance. The Lawson Hope Center, for orphans and abandoned girls. Inside, Children ran around happily, their voices filling the rooms with life. Some were reading in the library, others were drawing in the big hall. The air smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings. Kimmy walked beside Amara, holding a clipboard. "We've got 20 new girls joining next week," she said with a smile. Amara nodded, her eyes warm. "We'll make space. Every child deserves to feel safe." For the first time in years, Amara's smile wasn't forced. It was gentle, real. The kind of smile that came from healing. Life had changed. The headlines were old news now. People talked about the Hope Center, not the scandal. Amara had become known as the woman who turned her pain into purpose. But one thing remained unfinished: Margaret. Amara hadn't seen her stepmother since the court case. She heard that Margaret now lived alone in a small apartment across town. The once proud woman had sold her jewelry to survive. One cool afternoon, Amara packed a small bag of groceries, rice, bread, fruit, and a few medicines, and drove to the old neighborhood. When Margaret opened the door, her face was thinner, her hair streaked with gray. The proud sparkle in her eyes was gone. She frowned when she saw Amara. "Come to show off what you took from me?" she asked bitterly. Amara shook her head softly. "No. I came to thank you." Margaret blinked, confused. "Thank me? For what?" Amara smiled faintly. "Because your rejection made me search for who I really am. If you had loved me then, maybe I would have never found my strength." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Her voice trembled. "I thought hating you would make the pain go away. But it didn't. It just made me lonely." Amara looked at her with kindness. "I forgive you. Not for you, but for me. I don't want to carry that pain anymore." Margaret sat down slowly on the small couch, her hands shaking. For the first time, she looked human. Not powerful, not cruel, just tired and sorry. The two women sat in silence for a long moment. No dramatic tears, no big apologies. Just quiet understanding. Finally, Margaret whispered, "You look like him when you smile." Amara smiled softly. "He'd want us both to find peace." As Amara stood to leave, she placed the groceries on the table. Margaret didn't stop her. She just nodded, eyes glistening. Outside, the wind was cool. Amara took a deep breath. The sky was clear, wide and full of light. She walked back to her car, knowing that the past no longer controlled her. She had faced her pain, forgiven it, and turned it into something good. At the Hope Center that evening, the children gathered around her, laughing and showing their drawings. One little girl hugged her leg and said, "Auntie Amara, you made this place happy." Amara knelt down and smiled. "No, sweetheart," she said gently. "We made it happy together." And for the first time, Amara truly felt free. Amara stands at the orphanage's opening ceremony, dressed in a simple white dress. The courtyard is full of life, children laughing, balloons floating in the air, and guests smiling warmly. The press cameras click as Amara steps to the small podium. Kimmy stands beside her, holding her hand for a moment before letting go. Amara takes a deep breath and begins to speak. "My father taught me that love is not inherited, it's chosen. And sometimes, the people who reject you are the ones who make you discover your purpose." The crowd claps softly. Some wipe away tears. Behind her, a large banner flutters gently in the wind. The Lawson Hope Center, in loving memory of Henry Lawson. Amara looks up at the banner, her eyes shining. For the first time, she feels peace. Kimmy whispers, "He'd be proud of you." Amara smiles. "I think he already is." Children run around her, laughing and tugging at her dress, calling her Auntie Amara. She laughs with them, a sound full of freedom and hope. As the camera slowly pans out, her voice is heard in the background. "They said I wasn't wanted, but life wanted me. Purpose wanted me. And that's enough." Besties. Two Hearts, thank you so much for watching till the end. If Amara's story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more emotional stories. See you in the next one. Bye. Waving hand sparkles.